Between 1985 and 1988, George Clooney, LPC NCC, took part in multiple post-counseling sexual relationships. The first relationship started only 6 months after the termination of counseling. After about a year, the relationship ended and Clooney became sexually involved with another terminated female client. Yet, another short time later, the relationship ended and Clooney started to pursue 2 other women he had previously counseled but terminated in a dating-style relationship. It is not known if he was sexually involved with them. In 1992, an anonymous complaint was filed with the Georgia Composite Board, and it was found that Clooney had violated several principles found in the ACA Code of Ethics and NBCC Code of Ethics. The ACA Code of Ethics states under Section A5C that sexual and/or romantic counselor-client interactions or relationships with former clients, their romantic partners, or their family members are prohibited for a period of 5 years following the last professional contact. This prohibition applies to both in-person and electronic interactions or relationships. The ACA Code of Ethics also states under the same section that counselors, before engaging in sexual and/or romantic interactions or relationships with former clients, their romantic partners, or their family members, demonstrate forethought and document in written form whether the interaction or relationship can be viewed as exploitative in any way and/or whether there is still potential to harm the former client. In cases of potential exploitation and/or harm, the counselor avoids entering into such an interaction or relationship. The women he had sexual relations with had recently gotten divorced after the termination of services. Clooney also had recently participated in a divorce during the same time period. It was indicated that the women were the pursuers of him about 6 months after termination of counseling, but he allowed the relationship to become more involved. It is obvious that Clooney violated the ACA Code of Ethics, but we wanted to look into the specific state of Georgia, just in case that is what he was basing his standards on. Nonetheless, the Georgia Code of Ethics does not specifically prohibit post-counseling sexual relationships. However, under Section 43-10A-17(6) of the Georgia law, states that a reason for revoking one's license is for violation of codes involved in other applicable licensing boards, meaning that once an individual violates one major code, such as ACA, then the Georgia law will abide by that.
We have decided to pursue in the thoughts of ethical realism because it does not believe that there are any absolute moral standards that can be universally applied. The members of our culture believe an action is morally right, and that it is morally right to perform that act in that specific culture. The culture we are focused on is the ACA Code of Ethics. Once an individual becomes a part of this culture, they can have a moral obligation to follow the guidelines and rules. Another form of thought we believe in is altruism, which describes actions taken to benefit others. In the counseling realm, this means that client welfare comes first. Clooney can take these beliefs and argue his action was morally right because of the comfort being received and given, and he did not care about the consequences. We, on the other hand, take the ethical realism train of thought and believe the ACA Code of Ethics dictates what is morally right for the counseling culture. Thus, Clooney's license should be obviously suspended. When it comes to values, there are a few words that describe what Clooney was pursuing when taking part in the relationships. Accountability, a value that is evident within the ACA Code of Ethics that Clooney bluntly ignored. Respect, a value that Clooney took slight consideration of due to terminating the counseling professional relationship with the women when he saw harm would come of it, but lost when he gave into the lust of their personal relationship. Love, a value that was deemed important from both parties, but not certain as to how to receive it. Comfort, a value that was deemed necessary from both parties due to the lack of it from recent past relationships. The importance of comfort could have been the driving factor for the non-ethical pursuit of the relationships. Security, a value we believe the women were seeking from Clooney due to the vulnerability of their state.
When the various women approached him with their desire to form a more intimate relationship, instead of just stating how future counseling could not occur, he should have stated that he would not be able to meet socially or sexually for the next few years, per ACA guidelines. This way they would have a future time frame for when they could pursue a sexual relationship if they so desired. This would also allow Clooney and his former clients enough time and space to fully move on and heal from their respective divorces. Additionally, since the women and Clooney all had a mutual sexual attraction, we would encourage Clooney to cease all personal interaction with the women, not just a more intimate form of relationship, in order to prevent any sexual tension from building. This new route would have ended with Clooney maintaining ACA guidelines and retaining his licensure. Additionally, nobody would have ever had the ability to file a complaint against him. Essentially, we think Clooney should have followed the ethical decision-making model we have in our outline. After identifying this situation, he could look at the principles and virtues of the situation as a whole. The ACA provides very distinct guidelines for his situation, and he could easily see the 5-year requirement. Instead of rationalizing that his forming a relationship with his former clients would benefit himself and the women, he could skip over the possibility entirely. We think it would have been easier for him to follow the ACA Code of Ethics if he had tuned into his own feelings more distinctly. Since he had just divorced his wife, he likely had not fully processed his loss. Since he had likely achieved intimacy with each of these women through the counseling relationship, they became easier replacements for his newfound loss. Had he consulted with colleagues, he could more easily have seen this reality. Additionally, had he consulted with colleagues or even an attorney, he likely would have had the ACA's requirements refreshed in his mind, thus allowing him the ability to maintain them more easily. If his primary desire was to fill his new void of intimacy, then the actions he chose provided temporary relief. Although it is possible for his actions to result in long-term intimacy between himself and the women, we, alongside the ACA, argue that his actions are more likely to result in harm to both self and others. If he desires to maintain his licensure and still feel his need of intimacy, we think Clooney should have told each woman no, processed his loss following his divorce, and sought out relationships elsewhere. Consequently, when each woman approached Clooney for a relationship, if Clooney merely told each one no and then told them the requirement of a 5-year wait, then the ethical dilemma is avoided. He can continue to practice with his license intact, while also knowing he avoided a potential conflict of interest and harm to himself and his former clients. Additionally, he did not fully get rid of the possibility of any future contact with these women, but instead allowed himself and them the time to fully process their therapeutic relationship and each of their respective divorces.